Hello everyone, I'm Shruti Kumtekar, Marketing Manager at Cloves. Thank you for joining us in our Cloves monthly webinar. Today we will be discussing best practices for upgrading your ServiceNow instance. I'm going to take a couple of minutes to go through housekeeping, talk about Cloves, followed by the presentation, and finally Q&A. Housekeeping: this webinar will be recorded and you will be able to access it later. For Q&A, you're on mute. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A section in your Zoom control panel, and our panelists will answer them. If you have any questions that are not directly related to the webinar, please email me at shruti@closing.com or sales@closing.com. Our social media channels are listed here, and you can also access our previous webinars at the Close YouTube channel. A little about Close. We are a ServiceNow partner since 2011. We're based out of Santa Clara, very close to the ServiceNow headquarters. We are a full ServiceNow shop with 250 plus customers, 400 plus implementations. We have been executing projects globally. In terms of services, we provide end-to-end services. Our focus has been on customer service management, end user portals, and HR service delivery. Our panelist today is Darla. Darla, thank you for joining us. I will stop sharing at this point and let you take over.
Thanks, Shruti. Hello, everybody. I hope it's a good day for everybody, and thank you for spending an hour with us in order to attend this webinar. So going back to what Shruti said, if you have any questions about what I'm presenting, feel free to ask, use the Q&A. If you are interested in help from Cloves, whether it's on your upgrade or in your existing project you're thinking about, don't hesitate to reach out to us as well. So just a brief background for those folks who have not met me yet. I am one of the delivery managers and a solution architect with Cloves. I have over 2 years of ServiceNow consulting experience, over 5 years of ServiceNow experience. That for implementations, I've done core, HR, CSM, service portal, and have my certifications with ServiceNow as well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into our topic for today. It's going to be best practices for upgrading your ServiceNow instance. If you are a ServiceNow customer for a while, you're most likely aware, and you've been doing this almost every year. If not every 12 months, then probably every 16 months, you go and plan for an upgrade your environment. For those of you who have just used ServiceNow, maybe last year, or you've never done an upgrade before, you've started using it late 2017, but never done an upgrade, the time is ticking because eventually you're gonna really have to upgrade your environment or your instance. And so we wanted to use this opportunity to help the teams understand, what's best practice, or what's even the process. If you don't, if you've never done this before, what's the basic process of upgrading your ServiceNow environment? And some of these information that I'll be sharing you've probably done this in the past if you are a pre-existing ServiceNow customer for a while. And hopefully some of the information here will also help you tighten your process when it comes to upgrading your environment. So what is the difference between upgrading and patching? As you jump into the world of ServiceNow, you're going to hear them say, oh, we're now in London, we're now in Jakarta, we're waiting for Madrid. You hear those phrases and it may not seem familiar to you, or you understand the concept of the upgrades, but not the patches. So just to be clear, with ServiceNow, ServiceNow organizes its major releases or releases into families, and they're named after major cities like London. We had Jakarta. The very first major time that they used a major city in a release family is Aspen. So it's alphabetically arranged. So we're right now in London, and for most of you, you're getting some notifications probably about Madrid that is coming up in a few months. So upgrading, the concept of upgrading is jumping or moving from one release to another. So let's say you are currently in Jakarta, you decided you want to go to Kingston, or you can also jump a release wherein you're in Jakarta, you wait until the London comes up before you upgrade. And that's common practice among ServiceNow customers. The reason being is because there is, as you grow in usage of the platform, it takes a while to build the team that will help on the upgrade process. And since ServiceNow releases twice a year in terms of major families, then to do it every 6 months is going to be a resource constraint for the company. So that being said, it's common practice for a client to jump from to skip an environment or to skip a release from Jakarta. They're going to jump to London, usually if you don't do that, then what's going to end up happening is ServiceNow is going to upgrade you. So within a release, there's a patch or patches. And right now in London, we are in patch 4, and we are in hotfix 2. So for each time ServiceNow does the release, they don't just leave it and wait until the next release to improve on it. Any defects that they have identified, reported by the client, or they found themselves that is impacting performance or usability, or it's just really a lot of customers are affected by that, do expect a patch and a hotfix to get released. That being said, you know, as more hotfixes and patches get released, eventually some patches and hotfixes will not be available anymore. So if you try to upgrade and now to London, chances are you're not going to see London patch 1 hotfix 2. You're probably going to see London patch 4 information and the related hotfixes. So why stay current, right? I mean, it's, Darla, you're saying it's such an effort to go and upgrade our environment. So why do we want to? Can we not just stay in? We're fine where we are. Our customers like it. Our users are happy with it. That's where they're trained at. Well, one of the reasons why you want to stay current is, you know, you take advantage of the innovations that come with the product that you're purchasing, right? I mean, think about the dollar cost for your company when you use ServiceNow. When if you decide to just stay where you are in terms of release, then you're not really taking full advantage of what the ServiceNow is offering you. ServiceNow deploys new products with each release, and you know they want to introduce some, you know, I understand some are paid, but there are also some that are an enhancement or a new product that is not paid, that comes part of the package. So take advantage of that. And then obviously you really want to get the highest level of security, availability, and performance in your platform. If you, going back to what I said earlier, where if this is, you've never done an upgrade before and you started using ServiceNow maybe the last 12 months only, then you may want to take a look, and I'll provide resource links later at the end of this presentation. You may want to look into your Hi portal to check if you are up for an upgrade, because although ServiceNow does inform their customers as much as they can, they send emails and let the team know, hey, we're going to be upgrading you on this day and time. For somebody who's never done this before, this may not seem of value, but be careful, look into your Hi portal and check if they already scheduled you to upgrade, given that if you're in Jakarta, you're going to be end of life pretty soon. So support and unsupported releases. So I said the word Jakarta, and that's one of the major family release. The current policy of ServiceNow right now is to support the most recent and immediately previous release families. So we're at London right now. Kingston is supported. If once they launch Madrid, then eventually Kingston will no longer be supported. So because ServiceNow generally makes release twice a year, you're gonna really want to upgrade or plan for your upgrade, whether it's in 12 months, 12 to hopefully not 18 months, you know, 12 to 15 months is ideal. So I had added the link here, which is the release cycle. I can put in, since this is going to be available in YouTube, I can put the link also as a text field, the hyperlink. So common challenges when you're doing an upgrade is actually, if you're new, you don't have any experience in the upgrade, and it seems like it's such a daunting task, like you don't even know where to start. Because you're new to the platform, commonly also you don't really have a lot of experience in the platform. So, okay, I have a plan to upgrade, I have the resources to upgrade, but within the platform itself, when you look at it, you may feel like, okay, where do I start in the platform? How do I do this? If you are an existing or a tenured customer, we still see a lot of our customers don't have test scripts documented. They don't take the time to research past updates. So essentially, there's still that lack of preparation. So lack of understanding of what they're getting into. So meaning to say, do you know what are the features that they introduced in this release that you're getting into? How does that conflict with what you have? Is there any thing that we need to update? And then the second is the lack of planning. And then finally, the lack of ownership, like who's going to test what, right? So that in itself, I hope I can answer and address those challenges as we go through the slides. So the first is really, you know, in any project, you really want to prepare, right? You can't think of it as you know, it's like building a house or doing a renovation, right? You don't just go, oh, let me wreck out this wall, I don't think I need it, and then come back a few weeks later for you to realize, oh, that was actually a supporting wall, and now the whole house is going to collapse. So the really first step here is you really want to prepare, know your applications, the modules and the integrations that you have. So very basic, do we use ITSM? Do we use, within ITSM, which features of it do we use? For example, if you are using change management, are you using still the old version of change management, or did you start using the benchmark? Also, understand the integrations, right? So do you have a mid-server integration? If you're asking yourself, what is that? What is mid-server? Then you don't know, then validate it. Look into the environment and see, you know, type mid-server in the left navigator and click around the modules to see, did somebody add something here before I started using ServiceNow as an admin, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. Or maybe it's not mid-server integration, maybe Okta integration, or any sort of SOAP or REST integration. So list it down, you know, identify these things. Identify if you have a service portal or the old, you know, CMS, list that as well, because that's part of the items that you're gonna want to test. If you use, in your company, if there's different types of browsers that is allowed, what are the common ones that they use? You know, we have clients that heavily use performance analytics or sorry, Google Analytics, and you know, they run metrics on what browsers are their employees use, and they're interested to find out if the applications that they push into their employees, do they even work on certain types of browsers, as well as mobile devices. And then create a checklist of test cases. Once you have all those applications and modules, you know, you probably want to test for the end-to-end performance, like from the start of creating an incident all the way to the close. You know, do you understand that entire process? Document and save your test cases. And then this is, so prior to it being called health scan, ServiceNow used to call it ACE report. So ask ServiceNow to run a health scan. I know that now health scan has a cost associated to it, but talk it out with your ServiceNow rep. Ask them, hey, this is the first time that I'm doing an upgrade, or, you know, we've been using ServiceNow for a while. I'd like to see how our environment how good our environment is in different areas, like performance is one good thing to look into. And that health scan will display those scores to you and let you know which areas you really need to improve on. And then part of the preparation is finally building an upgrade team. So once you have that pre-preparation happening, now you want to understand the pre-upgrade process. So I've tried to break this down. I know it's very wordy, but you always want to start from this section, which is reviewing the release notes. So it's all part of preparation. Don't just say, hey, we're going to go to London. Understand what's happening in London. What are the features in it? Is there anything that will conflict your build if you jump into London? Say, for example, one common thing is, when you log into ServiceNow at the back end or the platform, you actually have what we call a UI view, and there, right now we're using UI 16. If you currently have a dated view, or what we call UI 11, 14, you may want to check, is my current UI 14 or 11 still supported, or am I going to be forced to use UI 16? Understand those things. So, and then the next one is I try to identify all the instances that you need to upgrade. So if we have customers, commonly ServiceNow offers 2 environments. One is dev, one is prod. If you have only 2, then those are the 2 instances that you're going to be upgrading. But for some customers, they have 5 instances. Definitely they have many sub-production environments. Maybe they want to keep one like a sandbox, not upgraded, and they only want to upgrade their dev, their test, their UAT, or their QA, and then finally their prod. Those things, take that into consideration and make sure you document it. I placed identify features to be disabled or enabled because it's common practice, or a lot of customers, they think, now that we're upgrading, why don't we introduce a new product as well? Why not turn it on? And I would caution you against that, especially if you have limited resources helping you in this upgrade project, because that means that you're adding a layer of area to test for if you introduce a new feature. So if, for example, you've never done a CSM or a HR implementation before, I would discourage you from deciding, hey, since we're upgrading, let's also turn on an HR scope application. Let's not. What I would recommend you do is, after your project, then tackle that. But if you are also, let's say ServiceNow decides to introduce a new feature, like London now has different additional features for knowledge management. Take that into consideration, identify first, do we really need this right now? Do we understand what this functionality is doing? And if you don't, then you might as well put that person in a parking lot and revisit that after the upgrade. So again, review your browsers. At this point in time, it's really critical. IE, for those customers that use IE, it may be a bit of a pain point. If you commonly use Chrome or Firefox, not as much, but if a common platform or browser for your company is IE, that is something that you really want to make sure you do extra testing for. Then create a comprehensive test plan. So when I say comprehensive test plan, it's not the test scripts, but it's really who is testing what, just that overall view in the test planning. Check to make sure that those teams, if you have an integration, for example, a mid server, and you have integration with that, and somebody else is managing that, check to make sure that they are going to be available for for this project. You're going to need that resource. Don't just assume, like, last minute when you're about to go live, that they will make themselves available. So make sure you block their time as they're an additional resource. Finally, decide to do a development freeze, meaning to say, if you have many admins in your company or developers, you have consultants working in the environment, and you're deciding to do an upgrade, let them know, hey, we're going to have a development freeze on this and this date. If you can't really freeze the development, meaning to say no coding allowed, then what you really want to do is to make sure to let the teams know, hey, let's say on Friday after hours, we're going to clone, and what we're, you got to make sure you export all your work, or, we got to make sure all your update sets are in a completed one so we can export it. So have that communication with them. And that way their work is not for nothing if you decide to, to clone and then upgrade. So identify your core team of testers, power users, and stakeholders. The stakeholders is very, very, very important, because they're the one who will be calling you if for some reason something is not working after an upgrade. So make sure they're engaged, make sure they provide you, if they are a product owner, for example, they own knowledge management, make sure they provide you some testers or power users as well. Identify a method for tracking any defects identified during testing. There's tools within ServiceNow that you can use in order to track, or for the team to report any defects. I'm pretty sure you have some homegrown tools within your company that you could use. Worst case scenario, you're probably going to use Excel, although I would discourage you from doing that, because there's going to be very many versions of that Excel, unless that's a shared file using Box or whatnot, or Google Drive. So after that, just create a high-level implementation plan with the schedules. When's your target go live? You got to be very clear on that, and then make sure that that's really part of the plan. And one of the things that is commonly ignored or forgotten is this box where it says determine whether existing internal training materials need to be updated. So if you have recordings, knowledge articles, or even like documentation that teaches your agent how to navigate in places, and that's going to change when you upgrade, make sure you identify that and plan for that, so that way you can assign a resource to say, hey, we need to update all these knowledge articles to make sure it's got the up-to-date information. Or better yet, go to Docs, so that way they have the latest information from there. And then schedule the health scan, and again, check with your account rep, ServiceNow account rep, regarding that. And then finally, now is the time to clone your prod instance of over your sub-production environment. So, and then we move on to the upgrade process. This part is really tedious. I've done an upgrade solo when I was first an admin. When I was still a customer, I was the only admin, and I had to do all of these. I had to be, facilitate the testing. Pretty much I did 90% of the work, and it was a small company. Only a few people were using ServiceNow, but it was still, there was still some effort involved in it. So it's a daunting task, especially as you grow more in users in ServiceNow. So make sure you build a team to help you and support you. So for the upgrade process, what you want to do is really complete the first part first. And this is pretty basic now. You just schedule the upgrade in the Hi portal. You monitor the upgrade, check how long it took that upgrading your production environment. But take note, the time it takes to upgrade your sub-production environment does not usually equate to the time it takes to upgrade your production environment, okay? Usually it takes a little bit longer to upgrade your production environment, but it's a good benchmark at least, so if it took 30 minutes, then most likely your production upgrade will take more than 30 minutes. So as part of your planning, you probably want to block, a total of maybe 2 hours to upgrade, commit the update sets, and so on and so forth. After you've monitored the upgrade, process the skip records. I'm not going to jump too much on this. If you don't know how to process skip records, don't worry. At the end of this slide, I have some added resources to help you. But the important here is once you've processed that, then it's time to run your test cases. And this is critical, because if the testing doesn't happen and you assume it's fine, then you start moving, or you start moving on with your project plan or your upgrade plan. But if there are some things that were not caught to begin with, then you're going to hurt in the end. So make sure that they test and they adhere to your timeline, and then the fixes are developed as needed. If it's really a fix or if the defect is really not fixable, then report it to high. Submit a ticket to ServiceNow. Make sure that you engage them, because it may not be just you experiencing that, and that usually is the result. When you report it and many are affected and there's no fix, then a hot fix gets released, if not a patch. Document what are the update set names, so that way you have a cutover plan. And then finally, if there are other environments to upgrade, go ahead and do the same steps that you did here, so that way until you finally reach to your production go live. So during your upgrade process, I made sure you engage a sign off, get an approval first from IT and the stakeholders. Make sure you again revisit and re-engage your core team that should be available during go live day. That means that once the upgrade has completed, you're gonna want to make sure that they do a sanity test. So make sure you do that. Have a production upgrade implementation plan. So what happens if after the upgrade this doesn't work? What are we supposed to do? Who should we contact? What's their phone number? Those kinds of information. Finally, submit and get approval for your upgrade from internally, your team. And then if you want to profile the performance of your prod before upgrading, this is kind of optional, but it would be great, especially if your ServiceNow is being heavily used by your company. And then this step is ideal. Also, clone the production environment first in another sub-production environment. That way you have a reference point. So say, for example, you have dev, test, and prod as your environments. Before you clone over prod, or before you upgrade prod, make sure you have an existing copy cloned down into another sub-production. So after the upgrade, if somebody says it used to work when we were still there, you can see it and validate really if it was working or not, and identify if it wasn't working even before then inform them. We'll fix that after we've done our hypercare or after the upgrade project is done. But if it's something that was really broken and was not caught during testing, at least you have a benchmark. Finally, upgrade your prod, monitor it, and take a snapshot of start and end times. It's a good reference point. So that way, because you're going to do this again next year or sometime in the future. So at least you have a reference point, how long it took for start and end times. And that's going to be available in ServiceNow in your environment. Finally, apply the update sets and post-upgrade fix scripts, and then finally conduct a UAT. And this phase, there's two phases of this. First is just a sanity check, just identifying what are the critical items you got to check. Integrations is one. Maybe notifications are firing. Those kind of things you really want to test for. And then there's usually a 1 week time frame that we allocate, which we call hypercare, to just keep an eye out of P1 issues that is resulting from the upgrade. After that, review your process, and we're going to jump into lessons learned, and then finally celebrate because you finally did your first or your, I don't know, maybe hopefully not your 10th upgrade. All right, so going to lessons learned. In here, just a few items. After you finish your upgrade, review new features that can be used, because you're going to do this almost every year. All right. And now is a good time for you to get prepared for the next one. Not around the corner when you're about to upgrade again. Definitely not 12 months now or just 1 month before the upgrade. Now is a good time to review it. So review the new features that can be used. If you see, for example, if you don't use test management and you decided, hey, I want to use, test management may be something that we can use in order to lighten the load on testing or automated test features. Let's go ahead and investigate what's level of effort or cost in order to implement that in our ServiceNow. Next is review steps added to the plan for future use. So if before, when you started out the plan, you didn't have a line item to check on a specific integration because you didn't know that there was such a thing, then make sure that for future use, you call that out and it's considered. And that way you don't forget it, on your next upgrade. Review tests that were added for future uses. So for example, if if you didn't have a test, let's say you have a old test script on knowledge management and you decided to use version control, you know, and there's no test script that was written there, it was only done during the upgrade, make sure that you put that in your repository, save it, because you're going to need it. You know, once you turn on version control, you can't really turn it off. You can disable some functionality of it, but you know, it may be something that you will never turn off. So take those test scripts and make sure that it's fully documented. And eventually also for your existing test scripts or test steps that are revised as you improve on your platform, make sure that you also keep a copy of those. Finally, review tests that can be automated. This is some automated test framework. You know, ServiceNow has rolled it out for some time now, and they've been adding better and better features. Like in London now, you can do an automated test on some service portal side build. So it's a good thing, you know, to invest and time on that. That way, you know, instead of having you manually test 100 items, you could probably give 20 of those 100 to ATF or automated test framework. And then you know, the team just does 80. That 20, you know, is still a big help for the team. So that pretty much wraps up my presentation. I'd like to share to the team this additional information. I will, as this is going to be recorded, you'll have an opportunity to see this. And I'd like to open the floor for our Q&A. All right, and
thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wanted to give a reminder to the webinar attendees that they can use the Q&A section of the Zoom control panel to submit any questions. So please go ahead and submit your questions. Were you saying something, Darla?
No, I was just going to say that if the team feels shy and they don't want to ask questions, feel free to always, you can email me, darla@clovesinc.com or sales@clovesinc.com, also Shruti. The slide deck will be part of the the recording. I'm gonna, it's a question from Sophia. I'd like to, maybe Shruti will be able to make it also available as a hyperlink in YouTube, but I'm not 100% sure, Sophia. Hope that answers your question. Helen Fong, how do I learn more about automated testing platform? The resources are actually available within docs.servicenow.com. Feel free to drop me a line. Again, I'll share my email. If you are interested, I could definitely forward you some materials as well. All right, so for those who don't have any questions, we do thank you for spending a few minutes with us of your day. We know you guys are very busy, and we hope that you learned something from this webinar. I'll pass it back to you, Shruti.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining our webinar today. And I will have the webinar recording available on our YouTube channel shortly, in about a couple of days. And I need to double check on whether I can post a link to the slide deck. I can check and get back on that. And if you're not getting any more questions, then we're going to wind up for today. And thank you everyone, and see you all with our next Cloves Monthly webinar. Have a nice day.